1935, the Lions win the NFL championship. The Detroit Tigers take the World Series. The Red Wings bring home Lord Stanley's Cup. Joe Louis begins his rise to world domination. This transforms the Motor City into Detroit, City of Champions.
There we are, a crack of the bat. We are off and running. Detroit City of Champions, the podcast. I'm Jamie Flanagan.
Charles Avison.
We are sitting extraordinarily close to each other today, Charles.
How you doing, buddy? Good to see you. Good to see you from this angle. We're in the same frame this time.
It is. There's a reason behind that. We haven't had many guests on the City of Champions. It was pretty much just me and you.
Which ones we've had have been high, the highest of quality.
Stanley Cup winning Drew Miller, Red Wing.
Yes.
And we've had Joe Louis Barrow Jr. the second.
We had we were at the Miss America 10 and
our guests from the Packard plant.
Yes.
So we've had some heavy hitters coming through, and but it's few and far between. But the conversation we've been having, we were talking about Eddie Tolan, and then you said while you were writing the book, you came across the story of Willis Ward, but he really didn't fall into the 35 story. His story kind of it fizzled out.
In my mind, this is the thing is the reason
he should have.
I felt like he should have been there. He should have been there. Like you've got the biggest collection of championships in the history of this country. The history. Let's just go with it.
And how did he miss out?
The biggest roster of championships in the history of the world. Okay,
yeah.
There's nobody that can put a case that Detroit that you had any other city has won more than 33 championships in a single season. And so anyways,
he should have been.
So like this could have been number 34. This could have been 1936 Olympics. How was he not inserted into this? How was Willis Ward not part of it? And that's why. And then you've got a picture of Eddie Tolan with Willis Ward, with Jesse Owens. I'm like, how was? And I loved his story. And I was like, and I told myself when I was doing the books that the first opportunity that we would have to bring the Willis Ward story out, I was gonna, we were gonna do it.
And then we had the room to do it here, and we did it
exactly.
And then I start writing the show notes. I was like looking stuff up. I was writing the show notes, and then I came across a documentary because on the team that Willis Ward was on, center with Gerald Ford, right? He became a president of the United States. And it was interesting. He's like, I'm going to quit. And, people listen to last episode, go back, listen to last episode. We're going to get more into it. But I came across a documentary that focused all on that. And I was like, oh my God, this is fascinating. I want to see this. I couldn't find it anywhere.
And I'd actually heard of this because one of the articles that we cited in the last show mentioned this documentary.
Yes. And
so when you told me,
I started stalking the director.
Yes. And then you told me that you had him on the show. And I was
said, guess
excited.
who I just became friends with.
Yeah.
And you're like, who? I said, Brian Kruger, who produced and directed the documentary we're talking about. And it is called Black and Blue, the story of Gerald Ford, Willis Ward, and the 1934 Michigan-Georgia Tech football game. You need to work the word fiasco into there somewhere. Right. Brian, thanks for joining us.
Well, guys, thanks for having me. This is a lot of fun.
So we were, and like I said, you heard the last episode. We really dug into Willis and his story. Just a phenomenal scholar, a great student, an amazing.
That's what I loved about him, man. He was everything. He was an academic. He was an incredible athlete. The best athlete that Detroit ever produced.
Might have been better at track than football, and he was like crazy amazing at football.
Yeah.
Only guy to beat Jesse Owens in 1934 in the spring of 35.
We mentioned that.
Yeah.
So, and in the story, like the City of Champions story, and even more so with Willis, left untold and unrecognized, and kind of the University of Michigan, not a super proud moment for them.
Right.
And so that story, I think maybe they just kind of like, we'll kind of leave that there.
Well, yeah, over the years, we've shown this film all over the country, and it's been on PBS, and get a lot of folks that say, hey, how dare they? And they come down hard on Michigan and come down hard on Yost. And we can talk about that a little bit later because I have some conflicting views on that.
There we go, man, because we do too. That's what I've got a whole series of notes here to talk about Yost.
But
me and Jamie were talking about 20 minutes last night. Going
more like 40.
But
I was like 40.
But I look back at a university that has been a beacon a beacon of civil rights, progressiveness, and everything for all these years. But man, did they drop the ball, no pun intended, in 1934. And until we made this film, we can talk about the details of this, trying to get this film made. They were acting like it didn't happen.
So you got a heck of a resume. I mean, you've taught high school, you taught college, you produced films, and how did you find this story? What brought you?
Great question. I want to know about that.
Yeah,
too.
what brought you to this story before we unravel it?
So the writer of this film, and he really needs to be celebrated on this, is a guy named Buddy Morehouse.
And he's credited on a few of your works.
He is. Buddy and I have made a few of these films together. And Buddy was a sports editor for the Michigan Daily back in the late 70s and early 80s. And we've been friends for a long time. We did stand-up comedy together. We've been friends since high school. And when President Ford passed away, and we cover this in the film, it starts out that way, President Bush did the eulogy. And he eulogized Ford and told this story. And Buddy called me, I called him, said, "You ever heard of this?" I mean, and Buddy said, "No, I was a sports editor for the Michigan Daily." It was a buried story for nearly 80 years by the University of Michigan because it wasn't pleasant. And first thing you do when you're doing a documentary, what we do anyway, is we look around to see if anything's been done on it. Because if somebody did a film or something, of course, we lay off. But we were just shocked that with the exception of Behe's book and maybe two other things, you got to look for the story for, any kind of justification. And certainly the University of Michigan. And it's not they were trying to keep it down. They were the year the film came out. But they just kind of forgot about it, like you would, right?
Well, yeah. But I think that, maybe there's some reasons for that besides just the embarrassment of it. I think that I mean, we can get into it, I guess, but, it just seems like there was like, it did like this is, let's just dive into it. Sure, I don't mean to interrupt you unless there's other something.
Fire it up. Go. Do you want me to recap it really quickly for the audience, or do you guys?
Let's go ahead.
Sure.
Hit us with
so in 1934, Fielding H. Yost, who was the athletic director at the time, not the coach, and he was legendary coach, and
he won like 57 games in a row without winning,
without losing,
legendary, legend.
Without
losing.
That's right. And so it's in the middle of the Depression. University of Michigan's coming off 2 undefeated seasons. Willis Ward was a part of both of those teams. Gerald Ford wasn't. Neither one of them played their freshman year because freshmen weren't allowed to play varsity sports then. So they weren't eligible. But as soon as their sophomore year came along, they were both on the team, as you guys pointed out earlier, because of Bill Borgman. Gerald Ford didn't see the field. Willis Ward did, because he was fast and good and he could do everything. Anyway, so 1934 rolls around. And Fielding Yost decides, he's got this new stadium and he needs to fill it. We're in the middle of the Depression. There's a lot of people that had come up from the South to work in the factories. And he had this idea that if I got a Southern team up here, I could fill this stadium up, because there's a lot of people working the Rouge plant and just a lot of people from the South that came up. So he goes down and he's got a connection. We talk about it in the film. He's got a connection with Georgia Tech through a brother-in-law. And he goes down to talk to Alexander, the AD, and says, "Look, why don't you guys come up and play us?" And they went, "Oh, that would be amazing. You guys are national champions. That would do amazing things for our program."
Right, yeah.
We'll absolutely come up. And you got that new stadium? Oh, absolutely. But we know you've got an African-American player, and we do not take the field against African-American players. So you need to be clear about that. To which Yost says, "Yep, I'm aware of that rule. And we'll make sure that our African-American player doesn't play."
Who knew that would be a big deal?
It was a big deal.
But where was that? But in the documentary, I was watching the documentary and I didn't, but there in what I saw in the documentary said Yost never said anything about it publicly.
Right. So what happens is he goes down
and
there.
then you had the Western Union telegrams, and I didn't see the Western Union telegram or anything that said it publicly.
So this is where it started really starting to hit the fan.
Right. So that's in the spring. In the spring, he says, "Yeah, let's pencil this thing in." They worked out the money. I think it was $5,000. Come up and play. Georgia Tech said, "Just a reminder. One more reminder, we don't play against black players. And you guys, black player, Yost, don't worry about that. We got it." And Yost goes down there a couple of times for social occasions, talks to the team to rev them up, gives them tips, because it's Fielding Yost. I mean, it's, point them. He walks
in the room, you win.
Oh, yeah.
Pretty much.
So they're excited to have him. And then he comes back up. And there's a couple of times, and the Bentley Library has these telegrams, which were donated by the Yost family, which is cool, that really spell out, hey, look, what about, you haven't made any public statement about Ward? And he said, I'll take care of this. And it stayed quiet until the summer. And in the summer of 34, word started to get out and started to leak amongst the team that they were coming up. Willis Ward was on the team, and the national press started asking questions like, hey, you got Georgia Tech coming up. This is cool. But, we know that teams from the South, when they come up, they do not play against black players. In fact, what they did is they would sit around, they have a little meeting and go, okay, we're going to take our African-American player off, but on your team for an equivalent, we want to take this guy off and maybe this guy. And in Ward's case, that they came up with a trade of
another
1-1,
end,
but
yeah.
that didn't happen until the night before the game.
Jeez.
So Yost starts getting asked about it, and because he's fielding Yost, he says, "I want to talk about it. Don't worry about it. We'll figure it out. We'll handle it."
He was vague. He was vague.
Yeah,
was he deliberately vague?
But
Absolutely.
trying to say this is right. This is what the divert. This is.
These are very tiny notes. You're in trouble.
That's what I do. Is I
like
so
micro dot.
It is.
So, well, I use like to
I know.
as I want. I can also write as small as I can write on
That's
rice
great.
if I need to.
It's a gift.
Like I could sit here with a pile of rice in front of me, be like, hold on a second, I'll move rice things over and put my notes on my rice tablets. So, anyways, so you said right there though is that, and this is where I guess I want to sort of challenge the notion, because, like I say, in the documentary, and also you were saying that so when you say that he talked about it in the spring with them about not feeling a black player.
Yeah, with
like
Georgia Tech, when you say with them,
with Georgia Tech, with Alexander and Georgia Tech.
But
Alexander was the coach.
Harry Kipke knows about this now too, by the way.
So you really paint in the documentary, you really paint Yost as less than open-minded racially, let's say.
Yeah, but he has but
so
again,
he's painted as a racist.
Yeah,
in the documentary.
But that was pretty clear. Whenever African American players would come to the University of Michigan, it was understood that they weren't going to play football, but Yost would welcome them to the athletic program, but they would run track. This is what you're going to do. You're not going to play basketball. You're not going to play baseball. You're not going to play football, but you can run track.
But why would track be acceptable and not football?
I have no idea.
But that's what I'm saying, though. That's another thing too. Is that a point to like his favor of potentially not being a racist? And this, again, I'm not trying to be a Yost apologist. I just think that there's there's just the overall story of what we know about the story. I feel like there are sort of gaps or of that I don't understand.
Well,
the thing is that I think the first potential component that may lead to my not understanding is just the automatic assumption that Yost was a racist.
Yeah, well, you got to look at the man, and I'm not excusing this at all, but sometimes we all kind of make this error on this. It wasn't right by any means, but you look at the man during the times. We covered this in the film. His dad was a soldier for the Confederacy. He comes from West Virginia.
West Virginia was a free state during the Civil War, and and just because he's a son of a Confederate soldier doesn't necessarily automatically make him a racist.
Right, but it tells you where his mindset is coming from, and it's not right. Again, I want to keep saying that that's not right, but all of the schools above the Mason-Dixon line graced this rule, and they knew of the rule. It was like, it's Jim Crow. It's like, okay,
but
and there weren't very many black players playing at any team.
That's right. There were a few, and as John Bacon points out, he thinks that Minnesota had one, and there's a couple instances if you dig deep where the schools came up. The Northern school happily benched their,
but it was almost an anomaly. It was at this point. I mean, there was a
so
it wasn't like you had a whole squad somewhere.
Right. Well, and African Americans weren't playing in the NFL, the
or Major League Baseball or anywhere else.
So you understand it's part of that societal thing. It's not the shock it would be today. I mean, today, of course, it would be what?
Yes.
But back then it was not.
So that's like I said. So
he's got a good theory.
So this is the thing.
Fire it up.
I just want to play devil's advocate for a second.
Play
all right.
away.
And because again, and if you saw the last episode, you the listener at home, Brian, if you saw less in this. So there's the big thing to me is that what doesn't make sense. There's an old saying, it's called cui bono. Who gains? Right? That's the old phrase. Who gains? When you're trying to understand something, you track back to it, to the point and say, who gains from this, who doesn't gain, then you're going to find out, closer to like, you're going to be able to fill in gaps as far as understanding and potentially what happened. And so this is the thing I don't understand. Okay. Like I say, if Yost is a racist, okay, if Yost is a racist and he doesn't want Willis Ward to play, okay, this is maybe what I don't understand is he did a pretty bad job of it up to this point. He did a horrible job because he just won 2 straight national championships with Willis Ward with a black guy on the team.
That's right.
And he'd already had
Way
Eddie
to
Tolan.
go, racist guy.
He had
Eddie
Tolan, who would come to. He was a star in Michigan with, I don't know, I forgot how many touchdowns did he have?
6 in one game.
Jamie.
He's like all Ed Bundy up in that business.
Yeah. So he had, so Eddie Tolan came to U of M, wanted to play football, and then he didn't get a chance, and people assumed that it was because of a racist system. He played track, of course. Eddie Tolan did. And then Eddie Tolan just said no. It was because of a knee injury he had, which is why he wore this wrap on his knee the rest of his entire life for track and field.
Good research on that one. That
so that's why he said that. So he denied that it was a racist system in place for him that prevented him from playing football. So another thing I wanted to throw into this to this idea is if black players weren't playing in anywhere near the wholesale numbers they were, in any sport, baseball, football, whatever, it's logical to assume that it was similar to that in the high school levels as well. I mean, that there was a lack of black players, that it's nowhere near what it was saying.
I never thought of that. But as you pointed out in the last episode, you did really nice research on that too, by the way. And
thank you.
But Willis Ward at Detroit Northwestern was the guy.
Well, I understand. And he ended up coming.
He was the guy in the state.
So what I'm saying is, what I'm saying then is that there was a smaller pool of black athletes at these high schools from which to choose to put on a team of the stature of University of Michigan, who's winning national championships every single year.
That's right.
So when you have a Willis Ward, who is the top athlete in the country, right? Or, in track and field football and that. And then there's a new coach coming in. And you said in the documentary, Harry Kipke was brand new at this point.
Not brand new.
Maybe a second year?
Well, third. And he was a sports hero.
But not in 34. What I mean is as
a player.
But I'm talking about when Willis Ward got recruited from Northwestern, it was Harry Kipke's first year, right? Or second year?
I think it was a second year. Maybe it was the first year. But
first or second year. So he was a brand new coach. He hadn't won anything, is my point. He hadn't done anything.
But he was all in.
Sure.
And he knew about Ward.
I get that. But what I'm saying though is that when he approached fielding Yost about bringing Willis Ward onto the team, why didn't Yost at that point just say no? If he was a racist, let me finish the thought too. Why didn't he just say no and nip the idea in the bud before he had to deal with anything like this, right? And then if Harry Kipke goes, I'm going to fight you with fists if you don't let me play that black player, he's going to go, you know what, Kipke, I loved you as a player, but you gone, because Yost had already fired 2 coaches like it was nothing. What's the difference of a third? Because the guy's going against his racist sensibilities and not letting him play in going against what Yost, if he's a racist and he doesn't want anything to do with a black player, and eventually just a few years later, he's going to create this whole situation. Why didn't he just nip it in the bud right there and not even let it happen at all?
There's a couple things going on that you need to know. Kipke really, really was close. I mean, Yost was really, really close with Kipke, and really, really close after Kipke delivers 2 undefeated national championships, which hadn't been done since Yost was running up the score back in the teens. So those guys were tight, and then this happened, and it was just Bacon.
Yeah, but I'm talking about before that. I'm talking about his recruitment to the University of Michigan.
Right.
But Kipke hadn't won anything at that point. Kipke was a new coach.
They were just friends, right? Because he played for Yost, and Yost loved him. And Kipke even coached basketball.
I understand that, but what I'm saying though is, if Yost, why would Yost 3 years later, after Willis Ward won 2 national championships for this team, Willis Ward's a hero amongst the University of Michigan group. Like, why wouldn't, if he was such a racist and dead set against letting a black player play, why didn't he nip it in the bud before he even got recruited? When Kipke came to him and said, I want to bring a black player on the team, he had to approve it with Yost. Yost would have had to have green lit the idea.
So what was the other side of the coin you thought it might actually be?
Well, what I'm thinking is what I'm trying to get is, what if this is just a thought,
we don't know. We'll never know.
We'll never know. But this is
supposition.
This is a thought exercise, right? This is just a contrary point of view, because again, there's the gap. This is what I don't understand. So what I'm trying to say is, what if Yost was trying to do the opposite? What if he was trying to set up on a silver platter a situation for a breaking of the color barrier, using Willis Ward in football to break the color barrier,
to show how egregious it was.
That's interesting. But you saw in the movie, and this is what Bacon's theory was, and I like the thought process on this. But Bacon's theory is that Yost did this to get Kipke back for bringing him on. Because when Kipke got him on the team, they circumvented Yost. And Yost was an administrator. He was on the board of directors.
Yeah, but Yost is the power guy in this entire situation. He's the athletic director.
But as you pointed out too, it's Mathai and it's who was
those are alumnus, but they don't have direct control over the situation.
No, but you don't understand what happened. Those guys went around and went into the city of Detroit, were contacted by the judge and said, hey, you got to give this guy a role. Those guys went all in and went, yeah, let's bring him in. Didn't bring Yost into that conversation. According to Bacon, they came to blows on that one, and Kipke won it. And that's where the big one might go. Like, how did he win that? But he did. He said, I'm bringing him in. And Yost said, all right, well, whatever. And what Bacon says is Bacon thinks that Yost went, all right, and then went through this couple of years, national championships. Maybe he saw that the roster was going to change this season. And according to Bacon thinks that he brought up Georgia Tech just to nail Kipke and Ward on this, which I think is really,
but if this is the
really
case,
indicative.
I'm sorry, Jamie,
really,
go ahead.
No,
go ahead.
Or the reason they brought in Georgia Tech, I think I said this, was because they knew the roster was changing. They knew it was going to be a troublesome year, and they needed at least one win in there, and they knew they were going to win against Georgia.
Or maybe they
had a good feeling.
Or maybe they needed attention at this exact moment because he knew the roster was ugly, and they wanted to create a situation on which U of M was the center point of the entire sport universe.
That's an interesting thought.
Because the silver, I call it the silver platter setup. If Yost, I've got a list of all the points here.
Right.
If Yost was set, and again, it could go two ways. Yost set this up because he was trying to end black players in football forever, right? It could go that direction,
right?
And in that case has been made. The contrary view is that Yost, in this weird way, maybe he had ascended to the top level of his profession. He'd done everything. He'd won so many national championships. He doesn't know, you're just counting at that point. He didn't even have enough fingers for the rings anymore.
4 in 1 year,
right? Yeah, and so he's done everything in his career, right? Yep. Maybe initially he had been resistant against black players, and maybe at this moment he's like, well, what's left in my career to do? What if in his mind he's going to open the door for other players of color to follow in football? And so the reason that's pure speculation. I'm speculating on his motive.
In the 13 years of showing this around the country and all over the place, I haven't heard that one, and that's cool. Maybe it's the first Yost apologetics we've run into.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. So anyways, I call this the silver platter theory because the case has been made for why he set this up as for the negative. But what I'm talking about is if he was going to do that, his goal was to shut the door on black athletes in college football forever, he picked a really awful opportunity, moment to do it. Because I call this, like I say, the silver platter setup. So this is the thing. So he again, in the movie, we say Yost never said anything about it publicly. So he's never come out and said anything. So he's vague at this moment, right? And so Kipke, as has been said in the movie, and as we've said in all this, said that he would defend with his fists his right to play Willis Ward.
Right.
He had said that in the bars. He'd said that in several situations that he would defend Willis Ward's ability to play with his fists. Right. So Fielding Yost says, so we're going to not let Willis Ward play for this game. All right. He's won we've won 2 national championships with this guy. And so we've got so this is the silver platter. This is why the silver platter said, so he's going to tell Kipke that Willis Ward's not going to play for this game after Kipke has demonstrated that he will fight with his fist. So number one, he's got a coach that's theoretically going to fight with his fist to allow Willis Ward to play. Number two, he believes that the team itself with Gerald Ford and the rest of these teams, they're beloved. They're best friends with Willis Ward. They just won 2 national championships together. This is a guy that's part of their crew. So he's got the coach against him. He's got the team against him. He's got the Willis Ward, who is intelligent, demonstrated himself as somebody who would go to a situation where there's very few black people or anything like this, potentially the perfect person to be like a civil rights champion or civil rights leader or a symbol of some case, in a case, right? Like he's not a nobody. This is a guy who is almost like a Joe Louis figure in this world. He's a star in this world of college football. And so the college media, he couldn't have been blind to the fact that when the word came out that Willis Ward was not going to play, that the college media was going to lose their shit over this, right? I mean, the media.
He waited until the night of the game, though.
But they would have been working up.
It wouldn't be covered.
But the rumors had been out for weeks and months, and the media it was a national story talking about that he didn't play, and it was a sympathetic Northern media and sympathetic collegiate media. University of Michigan, the one guy who was, I forget his name, but was a poet or whatever, a writer, and ended up was going to U of M at the time, and the whole college was freaking out. They were writing articles saying this is ridiculous. So he has a sympathetic coach who's willing to fight with his fist, a sympathetic Gerry Ford and the rest of the team. He's got Willis Ward in this situation, which couldn't have been oblivious to at that moment. He could have, like the college media, he had to have known that the college media was going to be, a liberal perspective on this. It was going to be a progressive perspective on this.
That was split kind of down the middle of the blue bloods on campus, the frat guys and stuff were saying, hey, just let them come up and play. They're our guests. Let's play this game. The game is bigger than one player.
But there was a sympathetic progressive media enough that he couldn't have been completely oblivious to the fact that there was at least the possibility of a vocal progressive.
It was huge. He hired the Pinkerton Guards a month before to investigate the student groups on campus and find out what they were going to do.
We'll get into the Pinkertons. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
So the other thing too was the game was at the Big House.
Yeah.
So the game wasn't in a hostile Georgia. The game was in front of a sympathetic crowd and in their home stadium. And then U of M at this point is 5-0. They've won 19 straight games. They could have faced any team in the country. They're facing Georgia Tech, who's 3-3 at that moment, who finished 5-5 and finished 11 out of 13 teams in the SEC. They were a bunch of nobodies.
Well, Michigan was 0-3 going into that game.
No, but I'm saying when he booked the game
on
the previous November 11th, the previous November 8th or 11th. I have the picture of the day of when
So what's your conclusion?
What I'm saying is that. And as far as the Pinkertons go, he hired the Pinkertons to prevent any fans from coming onto the stadium disrupting the game, disrupting the situation.
Also to infiltrate the student groups that were meeting prior to the game, a month before the game, so he could figure out what are they going to be up to stop this game.
Well, exactly. But here's the thing: if you were setting up a situation for a moment where the teams and this is what I'm trying to get at. What if he was setting up a situation in which if the players had walked off the field and not played that game, right? It could have been a defining moment through the course of the social justice movement, the course of the civil rights movement. It would have been a landmark moment in history that a national championship University of Michigan team did not play that game against an inferior opponent at home in front of a sympathetic fan, sympathetic crowd, sympathetic media with a sympathetic coach, and everything was laid out. It could have been a landmark moment because they said, that they're, in essence, if they would have been forced to forfeit to Georgia Tech, a national championship team who had lost 2 games, sure. But when Yost was potentially coming up with this idea, they were undefeated. What if an undefeated team lost their only game because they had to forfeit a game because the players wouldn't play because they were standing with their black teammate? You see what I'm saying? Like, this is like, what if
he could have possibly setting up an amazing
he was
civil
setting
rights
up a potential amazing civil rights moment where the U of M team stuck with Willis Ward. They didn't play. Kipke wouldn't coach, and nobody didn't even take the field in front of a sympathetic crowd.
It's a really, really interesting take.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. And so and that's what I'm saying. Like, and I'm not saying that, anyways. So that's what I'm not trying to say it happened,
but if we look at the years afterwards, and let's just play your scenario out that he had set this up so when the season was over, he can exhale and go, there, I think I got the wheels in motion. How come a black player wasn't allowed or wasn't on the Michigan football team until after World War II, after Yost was gone? Wouldn't he have recruited guys the next year going, hey, look, I screwed this up? There is one good Yost moment after that. In the Palmer Hotel the next year, I think it is maybe it was in the spring, and it could have been the track team. Anyway, they came in. The rumor had it that the Palmer Hotel said, you guys can stay here because this is what they would do, but he can't. The African-American player can't. And Yost did step up and he said, look, we founded the Big Ten here at the Palmer Hotel. I was part of that. I'm not, I'm sure he didn't say this, it was paraphrased, but I'm the most powerful figure in college sports now. If he doesn't stay with his team, this is theoretically what happened in the spring. If he doesn't stay with his team, we're never going to stay here again. I'm going to make sure none of the Big Ten teams ever stay here again.
See, that's another, I appreciate you adding weight to that, to that potential scale.
I like your theory. I'm not adding weight to it. I think what happened though, is I do believe that after this was over, Ward had a real come to Jesus meeting, and maybe it was internal. His family, has been very apologetic about everything, but also said that he had a change of heart after that game.
Well, that's what I'm trying to say.
The documentary lays that out.
That's what I'm trying to say. It
really sucked the morale out of
It totally did. And it ruined. It wrecked what could potentially have been one of the great, like Willis Ward versus Jesse Owens in the 1936 Olympics could have been like the biggest event of all time in front of Hitler and that. You know what I mean? Like sticking their fist up to Hitler. It could have been in like. Excuse me.
Could have been another one. And
it could be incredible. It could, and especially as it slots into the City of Champions season. I think Willis Ward would have won.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that Willis Ward would have been a 34th champion in this. And that's what I'm saying. We were robbed. I think it's like, I feel like it should have happened. Right. And I feel like
he got really excited about it.
He still is.
Yeah. No,
I've never heard that point of view. And I like listening to new points of view on that.
But it's funny. You really, in the documentary, the last 2 minutes, you really took the University of Michigan to task, right? Like, there's a library and a cultural center, or the policy center named after Ford, and a Yost Arena and the Kipke Drive, and there's nothing commemorating Willis Ward and his the only person, and I forget how the only person to suffer the humiliation
of being benched because of the color of his skin,
and there's nothing there. And then there's a postscript to that.
A lot of things happened after this.
So what happened after? Because you took Michigan to task, and you said they weren't really thrilled about this documentary coming out. Is that the part they had issue with?
Well, the first time we learned it a little bit, and I got to be careful with this because Michigan's come a long way since this time.
Sure.
But that was the year. I'm not sure if you guys remember this, but Michigan did this really cool thing. They don't retire numbers, or they do. There was 6, 7 of them. And if Buddy was here, he'd tell me between the Wistert brothers and Tom Harmon, and he'd nail them all. And I had brought up the thought to Dave Brandon. I said, it'd be cool if you're not going to retire number 61, because it would be a really good number to retire, at least have a sticker or something on everybody's football helmet commemorating that or something. Anyway, that year what they would do is they would have, for every home game that season, they would have the family of the retired football players on the field before the game, and they would dedicate that field to them. And the tickets, the game season tickets, had that person on each one. So we came to the University of Michigan and said, you guys you really ought to do one for Willis Ward, because a homecoming against Michigan State is going to be at the Big House on the anniversary day of that game.
Oh my God.
And we were told, no, Brian, this was the quote, Brian, we handle that internally. We've got that. So, okay. And so we, along with a young lady from Brighton, and it sits in the epilogue, saw the film and said, how come there's nothing named after Willis Ward? And so we brought her to the University of Michigan to address the Board of Regents to ask the same question. And they, of course, the Board of Regents, saw the movie for the first time and went, wow, yeah, how come we're not doing anything? So it was like really cool. And so we went back to the athletic department again and said, hey, we just did this thing at the Regents, might be a good idea. Just kind of sneaking into this. You're not honoring anybody on this day, the homecoming game. How about Willis Ward? You guys, this is our deal. Don't worry about it. Because that University of Michigan is, really pushes along great. So is it Alicia Urbane? I'm going to get this wrong and I apologize. Miss Urbane. She's really cool. The little girl. So we got her to Lansing that day and had Willis Ward Day commemorated on the day of the homecoming game. And gave the movie to all of the reps in Lansing, and they loved it and said, oh, this is an amazing story. Yes, this is going to be Willis Ward Day and it'll be fantastic. So then we called back to the Ann Arbor and said, hey, it's going to be Willis Ward Day. and not too much. So then I was on WJR and I said, it's going to be Willis Ward Day. All across Michigan's going to celebrate Willis Ward, except the stadium where he was benched 70 years ago.
Oh, snap.
Then a press release comes out of the University of Michigan real quick, says we're going to honor Willis Ward that day. So that was kind of fun. So that day on the big scoreboard, it was Willis Ward. They had the chance to really do something cool. Willis Ward's niece was a PhD student that semester. It'd been cool to have her, and we pointed that out, but we were brushed off at the time.
Oh my.
But since then, at the Michigan Union, the used to be called the artist room to the left. As soon as you come into the Michigan Union, they changed that into Willis Ward Lounge, which is really cool.
Yeah, you have that in the documentary as well.
Yeah,
awesome.
and so the family comes down.
Yeah, that was sweet.
And then when they redid the whole Michigan Union a couple of years later, you got to see it now. It's just super awesome. It's Willis Ward Lounge. It couldn't be cooler.
There was a bunch of pictures of Willis Ward's life and story in the lounge that you saw in the video.
Yeah, super awesome.
Yeah, that's good.
And that was fun. But yeah, so that was cool. And one of the other things that we thought was kind of interesting, and I got to be careful with this because we had a lot of help in this film, but there were a couple of times where we just ran into brick walls. And one of them, we went to the Gerald Ford Library situation is the first and last of a kind of library, and that is that the museum is in a different town than the library. The museum is in Grand Rapids, and it's amazing. The Presidential Library Papers are at University of Michigan, just next door to Bentley Library.
Okay.
And so we went up there, and after we're doing the movie, or during the movie, we said, "Hey, was there any evidence that Willis Ward ever came to the White House when Gerald Ford was there?" And
that was awesome.
They said, "No, there's not." And we went, "Oh, that's too bad because that'd been really cool, And Ford was only there for a little while, so we just keep making the movie, and the movie aired somewhere. And then I get a call from an intern and said, "Hey, Brian, we just found this envelope. You're really gonna like this. You come on down." So I drove to Ann Arbor, and it was those pictures, which I think now is the seminal part of that documentary. It's just awesome.
It had
old
to,
friends getting together.
He had to make a White House visit.
Oh, yeah.
He had to make a White House
and we didn't
visit.
even run narration over that. It was just so moving, and the pictures are great. And if you look at Willis Ward's pocket, he's got 2 cigars with him. He's ready. He's ready
I saw that. I was like, they're gonna go have a smoke outside.
And I want to compliment you again on the film because you present. I mean, from watching that documentary, the stuff that you put into that, you put in like when you're done watching it, you feel as though you've just seen every piece of evidence in photo and in primary source document material that is out there to be shown.
Yeah,
and put it out there.
Well, thanks.
You know what I mean?
And that's Buddy Morehouse's writing. Buddy's an amazing writer because he's a journalist. He's a 30-year writer for Gannett before he retired recently, and now he's a vice president of communications up in Lansing for a think tank. But he wrote an amazing story, so that was an easy one for me to do because when you write that well, pulling up B-roll becomes fun because then you're looking for stuff. And I was digging up Willis Ward's living cousins, uncles and stuff, and spending time in their house, and they go, "Oh, I've got this one of Willis, of his first marriage, and this is his first wife was in a car accident and she was an invalid before she died for a few lived for a couple of years, and so this kind of stuff and amazing things that happen along the line because I thought the story was really good. And when Buddy and I are done, I mean, the film's okay. I'm a Ken Burns non-apologist. I'd like to write stuff because Burns is very much show the movie, tell the story, stay out of the way. Don't make whistles and bells out of it. Just show the pictures, tell the story. And so that's what we did. But learning about the statue and Statuary Hall, how that got done was amazing. And stuff that happened afterward. Oh, this was kind of fun. And you guys might know this about documentary filmmaking or filmmaking of any kind. There was another one of those questions. Asked Steve Ford. I said, "Steve, did your dad ever talk about the Willis Ward story like to anybody else on TV or anything?" And he said no. But he called back a couple days later and said, "No, he talked about it on the Larry King show. I was with him." Yeah,
you had that interview on there too.
Man.
Here's the back. You had the CNN interview where he's talking about it on there.
That's
what I'm saying. You were the definitive. This documentary is the definitive source of information on this story.
I appreciate that.
You come across with that very
How'd you get the permission for that? Was it trouble?
So here's how it goes. So we got all that stuff together, and as you guys might know, that kind of stuff's expensive.
Yeah.
So we found out that the 34 seconds maybe of that footage was very expensive, $28,000 to use the Larry King footage.
Wow.
And so I got a call with Steve Ford, and Steve goes, "Hey, Brian, my dad was really close with Larry King. So, let me pull some strings on that. We'll get that taken care of." And I said, "Great."
Really?
Yeah. And then like two days later, Steve called me back and he goes, turns out my dad and Larry King weren't that great.
Oh, God.
It's now 50,000.
Right.
They raised the price.
So now Buddy and I are thinking we're gonna have to have a lemonade stand.
Oh,
out.
God.
Like, damn it, because you got to have that in the film, right? It's
Yeah.
kinda fun. But
You had to have that in the film. That was
so another interesting thing that happened, and I didn't bring a picture of it, but it was amazing. I live in Grosse Pointe, so I was driving from Grosse Pointe to Ann Arbor. I'm going down 14, heading toward Ann Arbor for probably just some other thing about this film. And I got a call, and I used to get a lot of these calls or emails. And so this woman called and said, "Hey, my grandfather was on that team. It was John Regecki. He was a punter." And I said, "Cool." And a lot of players were punters. Punting was a big thing back then.
He was huge in the 30s. Yeah.
And she said, "Yeah." And he was just amazing. And before he died, we had him write a history of the family. So he writes this 50-page history, and the first page was about our family, and the rest of it was all about Michigan football and plays and everything else. And we had a conversation lasted about 7-8 minutes or so. And I said, "Well, thanks a lot for calling. I love hearing stories like this." And she goes, "Yeah, we really miss him. And oh, by the way, we have the game ball to the Georgia Tech game."
What? Oh my God.
Right. And I'm like, "What?" So I'm swerving around.
Is that what this is? Yeah. That is what it is on the back of the DVD. That's a picture.
So I said, "No way." And she goes, "Wait, I got it." She goes, "I've had it in my kitchen for 40 years. He stole that ball."
Oh my God. It's on the back of the DVD.
And she said, it's sitting on a wooden stand.
Shady hunters.
Yeah, you can't trust the hunters. So anyway, and she's taking pictures of it and sending me while I'm driving. So I'm the guy you hate. I'm driving, looking at these pictures, "Oh my God, this is awesome." And she said, "Yeah. So we've had it because it's kind of worn, but," and she goes, "I think there's signatures on the ball." And I went, so now, and this is after the movie's out again, of course, right?
Right,
so,
Show the camera.
Yeah.
So maybe there you go. Yeah.
So viewer wants to hear too. I was excited to take a look, and we can't deny our listeners.
So I've got better pictures. I'll send you guys.
Yeah.
So I called her, said, "Look, this is amazing. I'd like to see the ball." She said, "Oh yeah, that'd be great." So hung up, said, "Thanks a lot. I'll be in touch with you." Oh no, I said, "Look, I'm on my way to Ann Arbor. Where are you?" And I said, "I'll come over and see you." And she goes, "Well, I'm in Southern California." I said, "Nuts." So I called up Steve Ford and I said, "Steve, I found the game ball." And he goes, "No way." And I said, "Way." And he goes, "You got to go get it." And I said, "Well, with all due respect, if you showed up with a couple of guys in dark suits with earpieces, I imagine you can get it better than I could." He laughed and he goes, "I'm going to China." He goes, I'll get there in a couple of months when I come back." I said, "No way, I'm going there tomorrow. I'm getting a flight out to LA." She lived in Temecula, so it was a cool
So was she
drive
willing to give it to you?
So I went there, and she was the greatest. We laughed and had a great time. That thing looked like an old liver. And
I know it looks on the back. It's looking like it's.
But I took it outside in the bright Southern California sun, and the signatures. I don't know how they did it, because on the ball the signatures are like carved in almost. And we looked, and I took pictures of it, got it into Photoshop, did the infrared stuff. Signatures all over it. Can't find Ward. Can't find.
Well, he wouldn't have signed it then. He wasn't at the game.
Well, that's what we're wondering. Maybe he would have, right? And Gerald Ford didn't sign it. Yost.
Maybe he did that in protest too.
Yeah, and Yost's name was on there somewhere. But anyway, I'm in the backyard, and I've got this thing in the sun. I told her, I said, we'd like the Gerald Ford Museum was going to want to have this. She goes, "Oh yeah, that'd be cool." And I said, "And they're going to hate it that we're like on my greasy hands." She goes, "Oh no." She said, "When my brothers were playing football and we were little, we didn't have a football around. They grabbed that."
Oh my God.
They played with that thing. And so I said,
I love that.
I said, "Well, I said, I'm not the person to do this, but I'm just going to ask for a sort of a preliminary permission. Would you be willing to give it to the museum?" And she goes, yeah, let's work that out.
Oh.
And I said, "Well, let me take a picture of it and send it." And she was great. She goes, "Let's do this." She goes, "At the bottom of the hill from my neighborhood here is a Dick's Sporting Goods. Let's go get a ball. And then we'll take pictures of each other throwing that ball around and having it like bounce under cars and stuff." And say that we were playing with it. And she was great.
That's awesome.
Anyway, but Steve then got a hold of her. The museum got a hold of her, and they shipped it back. And then we did a big premiere of the movie at the Gerald Ford School of Public Policy at the U of M. And Buzz Thomas was there, Willis Ward's grandson, Steve Ford, and the ball came back, and it was all the museum had fixed it all up, and they'd put air in it and cleaned it.
Oh,
and
nice.
So it doesn't look like that. It's like beautiful, and it's in this glass case now. It's just awesome.
So it's at the Gerald Ford Museum?
It's at the Gerald Ford Museum in Grand Rapids. And here's another one that's kind of fun. When we were making the film, there's no mention of that thing. There's a picture of Gerald Ford in the football uniform when we did the film, and they were another one that when we told them we were pitching the film to them, and they went, "We don't see much of a story there," and we went, "We think there is." And then when we did it, they're like, "Oh, this is cool."
Yeah.
Since then, there's been a multi-million-dollar renovation of that museum, and now there's a whole section up there that's got Ward and Ford's uniforms. It's awesome. You got to see it.
They got their uniforms.
So how'd you get
Yeah.
permission for that CNN B-roll section?
The Ford Foundation, the Gerald, what's it called? Anyway, it's the President Gerald R. Ford Foundation.
Yeah.
So
they underwrote that for you.
Yeah, they paid.
Did they?
Yeah.
It cost $20,000 for like it was only like a minute or two.
We did a film with
They
Walter
char-
Cronkite.
man.
Walter Cronkite footage is $180
Holy
a
cow.
second. That guy's been dead for a while.
Man, that is primo.
Yeah,
man.
yeah.
They couldn't cut you a little discount. Like it'd be like, how about 18,500 or
Yes,
something.
we're doing good work here.
Steve's comment was worth it. Though. I was laughing.
No,
when
it
he
was
called.
amazing. It was you had to have it.
When
It had to be in the
But
film.
when he goes, turns out my dad and Larry King weren't that great of friends.
No, that's
Great
awesome.
line.
That's
Great line.
amazing. That's amazing.
Prices going up.
Yeah.
So University of Michigan has changed their tune a little bit.
Yeah,
and
they've
it's
been
quite the
great.
celebration now.
Yeah, and so I went to Mary Sue Coleman when we did this too, because there's an education version of this film, like there is with all of our films. What we do, because I was a former teacher, is I write lesson plans and study guides, and then we put in on each DVD that's there, and then we put in all of the telegrams, pictures that we used and we didn't use, the stuff that didn't make the film.
Nice.
We put that all in there,
Like bonus features.
yeah, and our goal is to give it away to every middle school and high school and public library in the country. And we've done Michigan so far with the help of the Kellogg Foundation, the Helpy Family Foundation. A couple of people said, "Yeah, we want in. Just put our name in the credits." So we did that. That's been a boon, because you hear so many people now and they go, "I've heard that story. I've seen that story." So you can, pick it up and this and that. Anyway, but I went to Mary Sue Coleman. I said, "Hey, Mary Sue Coleman, this is going to be in all the schools and all the libraries. Do you want to put," and there's a part in the, and DVDs are old in the tooth now, but if you pop it in there, there's a place for a quote. We got a quote, I think there's a quote from Georgia Tech in there. This was a tough time in history. We regret it. And, just a proper quote.
Sure. And
boy, they didn't want to do it at first. And I don't think it was, we don't want to do it. I don't think that's it, but they didn't take it seriously enough. And then when the DVD came out, no, wait, we got to say something about it now. We want in. And boy,
can you put it in liner notes?
My God, it was just kicking and screaming. So it was really nice to hear you in the episode before this talk about the Bentley Library having a display and everybody embracing the story now.
Oh yeah, the Bentley. There's a whole if you go look it up online. I mean,
the website.
It's like an online exhibit.
Yeah,
I mean, they got tremendous photos.
I thought they weren't particularly creative with the title of their story though. They called it Black and Blue.
I think there was somebody
come on.
I seem to remember that there was a woman there, or maybe she was the curator of that exhibit there, but there's a woman there that's very interested in the story and has written a book.
Oh yeah, she's great. And we get,
oh, you know her.
Oh yeah,
and
they come up with, and she wasn't there when we were doing the film, but what we really like, and then I'm showing the film in Ann Arbor, and I'm sure we'll run into some of this. People will come up with different opinions, or that there's one guy that just insists Gerald Ford never would have said what he said. But we don't know. The only thing I know is Willis Ward said it in the White House. He goes, threatened to quit the team. And Steve Ford said his dad, threatened to quit the team. So we put that in the film. But this guy's adamant that he wouldn't do it. But I like hearing new stuff like, hey, you got this, or like the game ball or something like that. Oh,
yeah.
And Adam Shakur, I moved into his office at the Ford building downtown when he was moving out, and he represented the Willis Ward family after Willis Ward passed away. And Shakur told me this. We're standing in line at the bank together down in Griswold. And he says, "Hey, I think I've got Ward's jersey. I know I had it at some point. It's got to be." And I know. And I go,
oh my God.
And then he couldn't
You're
find
killing
it.
me now, man. I'm a junkie for that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I kept grabbing him. No,
finish that story. Did you find it?
We didn't. And I kept bugging Shakur all the time. I said, "Hey, you got that jersey?"
Oh, might have. Man, come on. Don't tease me like that, man. You got the jersey? Where's the jersey at?
But it's cool to get, like, there's a ticket that we got to use, the ticket to the game. So that stuff pops up now, and it's way more expensive now after the film came out.
Oh my God.
You used to be able to pick it up on eBay for like $25. If you find a ticket to that game now, that's
you had a picture of it on the
right, and it was
you had a picture of the game ticket.
I'll tell you who's
and you had the game program for it too, which is cool.
Yeah.
It's shown on the DVD.
Yep. Yeah,
And the game ticket. No, you're like I say.
Yeah, Greg Dooley, who's in the movie. Greg Dooley said that was his ticket, and he goes, "My ticket made the film," so it's in his program as well, which is cool.
What I liked about the Bentley exhibit, if you have a chance, or if anybody's listening to this, that's worth watching. And if you're interested in this Black and Blue DVD, this documentary is an absolute must. You got to get yourself a copy.
Yeah, go to Stunt. You can go to stunt3.com and get it, or you can get it on Amazon. I think it's out there.
Yeah, and the thing that I like about the website is or the Bentley exhibit is that they talk a lot about what life was like for a Black student on U of M campus at that time.
Yeah, cool.
She does. I think it's her. I keep saying her because I think that the girl that wrote that book is the one that did a lot of the information on the website. I think she transferred a lot of it from the book, and it's just really interesting. Like he was the one part of there is called like the. There's a junior honor society. It was called the Sphinx. I think it was called the Sphinx. Yep. And he was like a junior honor society. He was the first Black man to get this this National Honor Society. And it's like, it talks about what life was like on, so it's the thing, overall, whatever, like to say the things like there's, the things that I don't understand about it, the things I just,
it's a great conversation starter.
It is. And it's also it's kind of like the City of Champions story that like, it gives you a reason to dive into an era that many people, and maybe I'm speaking for myself, had never really thought about looking at is, sort of like a Black man on the campus of U of M in the 1930s. It gives you a reason to dive into this and to learn about what what the experience, this particular story, sure. But, and tying in with that website concept, which is like this is a guy who was an academic as well as an athlete. He wasn't, this isn't your sort of prototypical like athlete who's just going to U of M because he wants to play football and go to the pros or something like this. Yeah. This is a guy like he went and got his law degree after. Yeah. Oh yeah. He was there. I mean, he was using this he was using this experience. And as it proved out, this experience, he became a lawyer and then a judge and then like a high profile individual who, very, he was using football to get his academics.
And there was one little point in the movie, and it brings it back to, because he was a young man. I mean, these are college guys. They're young men. I mean, you think, but these are young dudes, and 18, 19, 20 years old. And he said that his people were saying you should quit the team. And there was a group in Detroit that raised money to cover his tuition. If he quit the team and lost his tuition so he could finish his education. He goes, this is too much for a young man to and
Ward
it's
never,
a lot to put on a young man.
And Ward never held that against the university either. And he always wore if you notice he's got the M button on his lapel.
He does when he's in the White House.
Yeah. And always was a Michigan man through and through. So I think he understood what the times were. And there's been some things written about how he should have quit and have called him and Uncle Tom for not for not quitting and playing the rest of that year. But I don't agree with any of that.
But see, Joe Louis was called that in the 1960s when Muhammad Ali was doing his thing. Was the whole, I don't need to summarize, but Muhammad Ali was doing his thing. And there was people that said, well, why didn't Joe Louis do that in the 1930s? Yeah, why did he kind of go along with the flow and not really stand up for it?
Understand the time.
Like Joe Louis was doing what he could do. What he was doing, he was doing what he could do. And it wasn't, it was the stepping stones along the way. And
so I put together, this may come out in another year or two, but it's a sequel to this story, and it's called A Race in Time, the Willis Ward story. Because what happens with Willis Ward, as you'd pointed out after this, is really quite striking. When Henry Ford hires him to work at the Rouge plant, he hires him because there's a lot of African-American workers working at the Rouge. Henry Ford paid him the same as he paid white workers, which drove the white workers from the South crazy. But Henry Ford was one of the first truly integrated, probably the first truly integrated large corporations in America. So he hires Ward to work at the Rouge, and we cover this a little bit in the movie, but there's some things that Ward ends up doing that is just great. So he works there, and actually we've got B-roll pictures of Willis Ward on placards where the workers are upset with him because they're getting ready to strike, and they say Ward needs to do this or that, which is kind of interesting for an African-American guy. We surmise that Willis Ward was probably the highest ranking African-American executive in the country at the time. But when he's working at the Rouge and he goes off to World War II, he hires Jesse Owens, who's down in his luck. Jesse Owens, after the Olympics, had a lot of awful things happen to him.
Like Eddie Tolan.
Yeah,
Eddie Tolan couldn't find a job.
Well, Jesse Owens was a little bit higher profile at the time.
Sure,
so,
a bit much higher. Absolutely, yeah.
Well, he was hired at state fairs and things to run exhibitions against horses.
Yeah.
Jeez,
and when there was a reception,
Eddie Tolan was running backwards in vaudeville. I can run fast backwards.
That's that Bill Robinson that was doing that with Eddie Tolan. He was doing
Eddie
the vaudeville.
Tolan.
Because Bill Robinson had to set a record.
So same sort of thing. So he's running against horses.
Yeah. So he's doing. Yeah.
And Willis said.
So Willis Ward hires him to gives him a decent job at the Rouge. And then when Willis Ward goes to World War II, he said, Jesse Owens needs to take my spot.
Oh, nice.
And have a good spot in there. But there's some stories that come out of that stuff when Jesse Owens comes back. There's a big reception for him at the Waldorf Astoria, and it's a big party. And because he had this great deal, although FDR didn't recognize any of it. That's another story. But Jesse Owens goes to the Waldorf for this big reception and gets in an elevator, and the women who are going up there to that reception do not want to ride with Jesse Owens in the elevator. So Jesse Owens
going to the Jesse Owens party.
Jesse Owens had to take the freight elevator with the food and the food guys up to his own reception.
Oh my God.
Because the black people were not allowed in New York City at the time to ride the elevator with white folks.
But see, again, this Willis Ward story
this is after the Olympics.
But again, see this Willis Ward story. It's like, and I say it's similar to like the City of Champions thing, because it's a beacon that draws attention towards that story is expansive, and it gives you a reason why, like we're not going to be about Jones tied up in the elevator. It's interesting. I mean, but that's a component of the overall universe that sort of radiates around this story. As I'm saying, like that's one of the to me, that's one of the one of the great things about these type of stories, that it draws you into this world for a moment and say, there's a lot of stuff going on, but let us have your attention for a moment and let's tell you a story about something that you didn't know and about a world, but when people become intrigued. I was intrigued.
So that one's coming out. What's this Black and Blue is this one that's going to be called
that one. The sequel to this one would be called A Race in Time. The Willis Ward story, but that's a couple of years off.
Because Brian, you've done several films. How many films have you done?
11.
11 films.
Wow.
Yeah. Okay. Yep. So, and you've done other shorts and things too.
Yeah.
We have one here. I'm a half Irish, half Polish. So
there we
I'm a
go.
Polish boy. Hamtramck, you talking my language there. It's the legend of Pinky. How do you say that?
The Legend of Pinky Darris. It's the story of Art Darris, the greatest Little League player there ever was.
Coming out of Hamtramck. Yep. So that's amazing.
And that's out already.
And then you got, you have, there's something like a Death Row Baseball.
Wait, what now?
Was that you?
I guess that's not. He doesn't have that one. I guess he doesn't have that one, Jamie.
That wasn't yours.
I do have a film out though, and I'll come back and talk to you guys.
There's
about
like, oh my God,
there's two of them. One is called The Girl in Center Field. That was our first film, and this is the 50th anniversary of the event. In 1973, Carolyn King from Ypsilanti, Michigan, decided to play Little League Baseball when girls at the time were not allowed to play Little League Baseball, and it was during the time of Billie Jean King and Bobby Riggs. It was right after Title IX. She did that, and it became a national story that reverberated everywhere. So that at the end of that summer, Little League was forced to include girls in Little League Baseball. And since then, over 7 million girls have played Little League.
Really?
So that movie is out too. It's called The Girl in Center Field, but we're working on a director's cut for the 50th anniversary because that happened in 1973, and this is 2023. So that's out there too. I also did an impromptu documentary that really went over really well, and I've got a copy of it here, and it's called Baseball Diplomacy. That's not what the cover says. It's first. In 2017, I took my travel baseball team of 16-year-olds, 17-year-olds down to Havana. And we were the first team from Michigan to play baseball against Cuban baseball players since the Revolution. Wow. And that documentary covers everything that happened during that and what that was like and how much fun we had and how goofy it was all at the same time.
How'd you get to Cuba?
We just...
Oh, it was what year was it?
2017.
So Okay, so
Yep.
okay, I get you.
So Trump was new, but
but Obama opened it up to Cuba and baseball.
He did.
Yeah,
And Trump was just as excited about it. Trust
oh
me.
really?
Oh,
Okay.
yeah. Everybody down there knew that Trump wanted to build a Trump Tower on the Malecon
in Cuba,
Cuba until Marco Rubio said, if you want to win Florida, don't do that.
Really?
And in fact, roll back everything that's happened that Obama did, because there's a lot of expats here in Florida. That
because I thought Trump shut down a lot of the Cuba stuff that Obama had done.
Trump really wanted a hotel. On
really, man. But see, I've got this weird thing where like I see those Godfather, like like seeing Cuba, like back when they had the
Meyer Lansky,
when everything was like that, where Cuba was like a Las Vegas. I like kind of want to see that, man. I would like to go to Cuba instead of Vegas as like a is like a. I don't know. That's just maybe it's that it's a place that you're kind of like not allowed to go or whatever. The taboo.
Everybody in the world except us goes. If you want
you got to go to Canada. You got to
fly from Toronto. The weekend parties in Cuba are astonishingly
it's
great.
It's almost like a guilty pleasure. Like I'm like, man, I'd like to go to Cuba.
Right. So watch that movie and you'll see what a great time you can have in a wholesome way. Yep.
I like how your stories you got are from Michigan though. You got all these like great stories from Michigan. I think that's awesome.
I used to tell people you can throw a baseball in any direction in Michigan and land 12 more stories that I could finish at a time.
I like that though.
One of the things that Buddy and I are working on that's going to be of interest to you guys is something that happened in 1957. The Detroit Red Wings, who were in the middle of their Stanley Cup.
Let me guess before you finish the statement. Sure. They went to that prison and played.
That's right.
Yes, I got it. I guessed it. I knew it because that's a great story that's never been covered.
Yeah, so they
went to a prison. Go ahead.
Here's what they do. They're down at the DAC. Jack Adams is talking to.
That's our guy. We love Jack. He's a little older Jack, but yeah, go ahead.
So Jack Adams is talking to the warden down at the DAC, or the warden of the Marquette prison. And he says, hey, we got a hockey team up there. They're not particularly great. A lot of them are the Purple Gang guys. They had to learn how to play hockey, but we got a rink. Why don't you bring your boys up and play? And Jack Adams goes, I'm not going to do that. And he goes, no, really. And Jack Adams played a hunch and said, all right, you get us a plane. You get us our own private plane, and I'll bring the guys up. And that was.
And what was it? It was in Sault Ste. Marie, wasn't it?
No, it was in Marquette.
Marquette. Sorry.
So the warden goes back up, talks to his lumber pals, and about 8 seconds they get the money together to get a DC-9. Call Jack Adams up, and in the middle of that season, think about this happening now. In the
Stanley Cup, this is the best team in the world.
Puts them all on a plane, gets them up there. So this movie's called Pros and Cons.
That's going to be.
It's going to be out.
What a great title! What a great title!
And it's all about that secret game.
And I cut you off. When is it going to be out? What did you say?
Probably this time next year, or actually,
man, I got to see
this time in the fall next year. We lost Ted Lindsay though, and Ted Lindsay was the last remaining player in that game.
I met Ted Lindsay. I met Ted Lindsay up on Mackinac Island. This is I think a great story. I was in my young 20s. I was a dock porter on Mackinac Island, and I was on the Arnold dock, and I come walking up, and there's this group of other porters talking to this old guy, and I walk up, I'm like, holy crap, dude, it's Ted Lindsay. Right. Yeah. And like I knew who he was, and anyways, so we're just listening to, he's waiting for a boat to leave, get off Mackinac Island. And the boat comes up and he gets on the boat and, we're just random chatter. It wasn't of anything monumental, but the greatest thing was when he walked away. We're all in our young 20s. We're all a bunch of tough, like, muscled up, young college, young punks, and this one guy in the group, there's like maybe 6 of us. He goes, I don't care how old that guy is, man. He'd kick any one of our asses. He would kick any one of our asses right now, dude. He's like, that guy. I'm like, no. I go, no crap, dude.
If I was a visitation at that funeral home, walking past his casket, I'd be scared. That an arm would come up. And get me,
he was kind of he was short and looking at you like you're just like, man, this guy. I go, that guy goes, I don't care how old that guy is. That guy kick.
I can't tell you that. I can't tell you the amount of films we've done where Buddy and I have looked at each other and go, man, we should have done this 2 years ago or 3 because that guy was still alive. We didn't. And you just got to do stuff because, and I'm big on this now, folks that walk by older people, and I mean real senior citizens, and you don't not only not treat them with respect, but kind of like, guys in my way. Those guys and women are just gold mines of information for stuff like this. And when you lose them, it's gone. In that movie, that's a spoiler alert a little bit. When that game, they were playing for a water bucket for like a pail. It was a urine
urine bucket.
Yeah.
But and it's like, and I don't want to give anything away with it, but
cool.
but there's like the picture with Jack Adams. Like, I'm not trying to spoil who won the game, like, but there's a thing where Jack Adams with the wings and won, and Jack Adams has got this water bucket and he's holding it up in the air and he's so excited about it, and he's like, "Look at we won," you know, like, and the Red Wings are behind him, like, "Yeah, like we won." And they destroyed that team.
Well, what they did is when they took the ice, they gave the prisoners Terry Sawchuk. They said, "Look,
that's right. Because
they were going to tear up their goalie." And it was still, after the first period, it was 12-0, and Terry Sawchuk was pissed. So then they just mixed up teams. So Howe and a couple of guys went and played for the prisoners, and it's just really cool. The limitations of that story is what we call in the business B-roll. There's just not a lot of it because it was in a prison. It was really done undercover because Jack Adams didn't want to be. Guess what we're doing tonight? He just said, "Damn it!"
It was totally like a spontaneous type of thing, right?
But it's a cool story.
But that bucket, when he's holding that bucket up, there's a great picture of it. I mean, it's available online and all that. And he's in that, but the picture is like it's like he's holding this water bucket up, like it's the Stanley Cup. Like, he's super excited, like, "Look what we won!" Like, he's totally in the moment. That's a great story, dude. You when you come out, I mean, if I would love to have you back on here when you put that movie out, you know, we can, if we can hype it in any way, and if, you know, just to talk about it with you.
All right, one more, Bobby Arvin.
That one's called Bob Arvin. So it's called Where the Brave Dare to Tread. And it's the first, not first, but it's a non-sports movie, although he was an all-state wrestler, and then we went to West Point. He became a champion wrestler as well. But he was just an amazing story about an amazing guy that you just don't get anymore. He was killed in Vietnam in 1967, but he was the first cadet at West Point, you know, it's just top guy. And that film talks about his life in Ypsilanti, and then when he goes to West Point, and it's astonishing story. It's sad, but what happens afterwards and scholarships and stuff. But it's pretty cool. And I did that more as a gift to that family and the city of Ypsilanti, really.
Just a thought I had in my head, and I'd want to. Maybe it's better for after the show, but I don't want to forget to ask you. Have you ever thought about like looking up, like, because you were talking about PBS, but have you thought about reaching out to Tubi? Have you ever heard of Tubi? The channel Tubi?
Yeah.
That's like one of my favorite channels, man. It's got some of the greatest documentaries ever, and I think that they would eat this up.
They would. We get a lot of offers. In fact, The Legend of Pinky Darris played several times on MLB Network.
Oh, okay.
But it's the kind of thing where it you know, what do? They go, "Hey, you know, we'll show your film on national TV." Great. Well, what are you going to pay for it? No, we're just going to show it on national TV. And you go, "Well, all right."
But I wonder, but Tubi. But I'm telling you, Tubi. I don't know if do you ever watch Tubi at all?
Yeah.
Oh, you do? Okay, good.
Yeah.
So you're familiar with it.
Yep.
I watch Tubi all the time, and I love it. It's got some great documentaries.
Will they cut me a check for $250,000?
That I don't know that.
But I don't. When MLB plays it, you're not getting that Cronkite or Larry King money.
I don't know that. I guess maybe I was asking it as.
But MLB is getting advertising money during the spots. Going, "Hey, and what they told me last time, he said, man, our viewership really spiked that Sunday afternoon. We showed your film. Great, good for you.
Thanks."
Well, if you do reach out to Tubi or whatever, let me know, and I mean, if you do reach out to Tubi and you maybe did something with them, let me know, because I like if we can do anything to tell the listeners where, you know, like, you know, hey, it's on Tubi, go check it out. Or whatever,
on two of our films, Black and Blue and The Girl in Center Field, there are screenplay adaptations that are being shopped around, and The Girl in Center Field had interest from Sony and from Disney early on. And that pops up every now and then. And in the movie business, if you guys know something about feature films, I don't, but I learned a little bit about this. Something can sit on a shelf for a long time until somebody comes up. And in the case of The Girl in Center Field, they say as soon as some blonde comes up who's 10 and whose agent said, "Yeah, this Disney TV stuff is great, but you got any movies for her?" And they blow the dust off the script. We got something here, you know. Here, I've
heard that before. Yeah.
So you can sit on them for a while, and then all of a sudden, you know, we'll give you $1 million for the script, $1 million for this.
Yeah.
You know, so I keep waiting for that one.
Yeah. No, but yeah, I would, like I say, I watched. There's Tubi has got some incredible documentaries. I think that they would be interested.
Yep. We all like watching documentaries. Nobody really wants to pay for
them. I just trust me, man. I hear you, because I got these City of Champions books, and that's the thing, people love to hear about it. But it's like, hey, man, give these books a read, and they're like, "No, I'm buying it as a gift." Like I had a guy one time tell me with the book, he goes, "Hey, man, I got your book. I got those books," and I was like, "Really?" And he goes, "Yeah." He goes, I still got them all in the original packaging. I haven't even opened it. I'm keeping them in mint condition. I go,
Read 'em.
yeah, I appreciate
Crack 'em
it. I'm glad you look at them as a collector's item. That makes me, feel somewhat good. But I actually wrote them so that people would read them. Like, and he's
funny.
like,
That's funny.
and he's like, oh yeah, maybe I'll crack it open.
Yep. Like I said, we show these around a lot. I think I'm going to be in Ann Arbor at the Ann Arbor Public Library showing Black and Blue in a couple of weeks, and it's so cool to run into people who can add to the story. So
yeah,
we like that. Or
so Brian, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Brian Kruger, it's stunt3, STUNT3.com, and you can get all of his documentaries there.
Everything's out there.
And listen,
all the
and for
information.
streaming as well, you can stream
Listen,
everything.
I know we
Yeah.
kind of went through these movies. We talked about these things, but I'm saying, like, to the listeners, to the viewers at home, go check out this website and take a closer look at some of these things.
It'll be
Look at
linked
these
in
stories. These are some stuff
for
you
you.
want to see. You want to see Black and Blue. You want to see. I want to see this Pinky Darris.
Yeah,
movie.
you're really gonna like that. That's
This,
cool.
If you get it's this.
and
I think we
We
browsed
might
that
do a
real
showing
quick.
at Whiskey in the Jar.
Yeah,
there you go.
These are. I mean, you got these are Michigan themed, great sports stories. Go check these things out. Go support our new friend Brian go check out his website.
I really appreciate it, guys. Thanks
All
a lot
right.
for having me on.
Oh, our pleasure, man. It was a great conversation. Like I say, it was nice. It was I'll say it for the third time. This, you present the definitive, information on this. The movie is just chock full of the primary source documents of the, you've got the CNN interview. You've got all you find yourself, like, at the end, you're like, and then he appeared on CNN and you're like, oh God, for the love of God, show the CNN video. And then there it is.
Yeah.
And and then he found himself, and then he made a tour to his old friend Gerald Ford, because when Ford makes it to the White House, you're going, please God, let Willis Ward get to the White House. And then there he is.
I have one more request on your show, because you guys have a nice audience. And for the last 10 years or so, I've been taking care of Willis Ward's grave. And people don't really take care of it. It's not anything other than you just kind of forget about it. It's a flat ground gravestone out on 14 Mile in Ryan. Oh, and was it 13 Mile in Ryan? It's a historic black cemetery out there. And if I don't go and trim it twice a year, once in the spring, once in the fall, it gets grown over and it gets lost. And if people want to get a hold of me through the link stunt3.com, I'm looking for a couple of people to help, just in case something happens to me along the line. I want to be able to have younger people come out with a weed whip twice a year and make sure it gets. We had a wonderful guy, an old friend, Roger Throne, and who lives in Augusta, Georgia, and he called them up and had them raise the tombstone up a little bit because it's flat, but it still gets grown over. So it's kind of cool, and it's an act of love. I always go out there and take a picture of it, put a little Michigan flag and a football and take a picture of it every year, but it needs to be weed whipped so it doesn't get lost to time, because it'll just get sunken. And so if anybody wants to get a hold of me, I'll tell you exactly where it is.
Absolutely. And another in a suggestion too, in that along those lines is, have you ever taught the Hamtramck grounds crew? Have you talked to them at all?
Yeah, in fact, we had the road. If you go to Hamtramck, back to the little road, it's Dan Street that goes back to the Negro Field baseball field that just got renovated. That is called Pinky Darris Boulevard. We had that named after him.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool, yeah. Those are great guys. I met those guys
way.
when they were the Navenfield grounds crew.
Oh, cool.
When they were doing the Tiger Stadium. We played softball out there one year. Yeah. But now they're and
they're going to name the Little League field that's in center field of that same complex. That's going to be Pinky Darris Field.
Really?
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And they're doing some great work out there on that field, man. The Hamtramck group. But maybe they could help, lend into that, because if that group keeps on, going over the years, that might be a nice little legacy that they also take part in.
That'd be cool. Yeah. But guys, I really appreciate the time here.
Our pleasure, man.
Brian Kruger, we will do it again.
Out, man. This is an interesting conversation.
It's Detroit, the city of champions.
Did you just cut me off?
I'm cutting you off.
Jamie.